July 1863. This Pennsylvania farmland became America's bloodiest battlefield. 51,000 men fell here in 3 days. But something else happened at Gettysburg. Something that defies explanation. Park rangers refuse to patrol certain areas after dark. Tourists capture voices on recordings where no one stands. Photographs reveal figures in Union blue that weren't there when the shutter clicked. For over 160 years, Gettysburg has been called the most haunted location in America. But these aren't just ghost stories. They're testimonies from skeptics, scientists, and historians, suggesting that July 1863 left a scar on reality itself. July 1st, 1863. Confederate forces under General Robert E. Lee collide with Union cavalry west of Gettysburg. What begins as a skirmish explodes into the largest battle ever fought in North America. Neither side planned to fight here. The armies simply found each other. But by sundown on July 3rd, this accidental battlefield would hold more American casualties than D-Day, Pearl Harbor, and 9/11 combined. Devil's Den, Little Round Top, the Wheat Field. Innocent names for places that became slaughterhouses. The killing was so intense that soldiers later described the ground as slippery with blood and brains. In the July heat, bodies decomposed within hours. The wounded screamed for water that never came. Amputation stations ran continuously, piling severed limbs outside surgical tents. This wasn't war. This was industrial-scale death. When the guns fell silent, Gettysburg's 2,400 residents faced a nightmare. 7,000 corpses rotting in their fields. 21,000 wounded men filling every building, homes, churches, barns. Even the gatehouse at the cemetery became an operating theater. A local woman wrote, "The cries of the wounded and dying kept us awake for weeks. When silence finally came, it felt worse, like the town itself had died." Another resident noted something stranger. At night, we heard marching, thousands of footsteps, but the soldiers were already gone. The dying left messages. Some screamed for mothers. Others called out coordinates for artillery that no longer fired. One surgeon documented soldiers who died, then sat up hours later to finish sentences before collapsing back into death. Within a decade, Gettysburg became a pilgrimage site. Veterans returned to find their ghosts, but they weren't alone. Tourists began reporting encounters they couldn't explain. 1889. A Philadelphia teacher named Sarah Patterson documented seeing an entire regiment in formation near the copse of trees. She described their uniforms in perfect detail, including unit insignia verified by historians. When she approached, they vanished. This is ground zero for Pickett's charge, the Confederacy's last desperate assault. 15,000 men marched across open ground toward Union guns. Half died in minutes. The copse of trees was their objective. They never reached it. Survivors described a sound they never forgot, the wet thump of bullets hitting flesh. That sound, they said, was louder than the cannons. Veterans reported hearing it in nightmares for decades. Some still hear it at Gettysburg when no guns are firing. Electronic voice phenomena, EVPs. Modern recording devices capture sounds imperceptible to human ears. At Gettysburg, they capture conversations. Fall Back to the Ridge. Recorded at Devil's Den, 2019. No living person nearby. Mother, I Can't Find My Company. Recorded at the Wheat Field, 2021. Child's voice. Historians confirmed drummer boys as young as 12 fought here. Why Are They Still Here? Recorded at the Virginia Monument, 2023. Question asked in a Southern accent. No response recorded. Perhaps the question itself is the answer. Electronic devices capture heat signatures invisible to the naked eye. Gettysburg investigators have captured hundreds of thermal anomalies, human-shaped heat patterns in locations where no living person stands. The phenomenon began before the battle ended. On July 4, 1863, while clearing the dead, Union soldiers reported seeing comrades they'd just buried walking among them. Private Thomas Ford, 12th New Jersey Infantry, wrote, "I saw Lieutenant Baxter clear as day, standing in formation. I spoke to him. He turned to me, and I swear his eyes were empty, just dark holes. Then I remembered we'd buried Baxter that morning. I ran." 1913. 50 years after the battle, veterans from both sides returned for a reunion. Over 50,000 men, most in their 70s. They came to reconcile, to forgive, and many came to confront what they'd witnessed. Sacks-covered bridge. Confederate forces used it to retreat on July 4th. Wounded soldiers who couldn't keep pace were left behind. By morning, dozens of bodies hung from its rafters, some executed by pursuing Union cavalry, others by suicide. Modern visitors report overwhelming despair when entering the bridge. Cameras malfunction, batteries drain, some feel hands pushing them. Park rangers have banned nighttime access after multiple tourists reported being physically grabbed by invisible forces. The triangular field. During Pickett's charge, artillery fire caught Confederates in converging crossfire. They couldn't advance, couldn't retreat. They died standing still. Over 400 men fell here in approximately 11 minutes. Modern metal detector surveys reveal the density of fire. One musket ball or artillery fragment every 2 square feet. The earth itself became shrapnel. Geophysicists have discovered something remarkable about Gettysburg. The battlefield sits on granite bedrock rich in quartz crystal, a substance that under pressure generates electromagnetic fields. Stone tape theory suggests traumatic events may imprint on crystalline structures like data on a hard drive. The terror, the agony, the final thoughts of 50,000 men potentially recorded in the stone itself. Research teams have documented electromagnetic anomalies occurring in patterns. July 1st through 3rd, the battle anniversary, readings spike dramatically. Thermal cameras capture organized movement. Audio equipment captures increased EVP activity. The phenomenon follows a schedule, the calendar of death. But science explains the mechanism, not the experience. It doesn't explain why tourists see specific soldiers who died in specific ways that historians later verify. It doesn't explain conversations with figures who answer questions accurately, then vanish. Perhaps we're asking the wrong question. Not why is Gettysburg haunted, but what are the ghosts trying to say? 22-year-old William Patterson, Pennsylvania Infantry, killed July 2nd. 19-year-old Samuel Brooks, Virginia Cavalry, killed July 1st. 18-year-old Thomas White, Ohio Artillery, killed July 3rd. They weren't soldiers, they were children. Most had never left their counties before enlisting. They wrote letters about homesickness, about fear, about wanting to see their mothers. Then they died, screaming, bleeding, often alone in a Pennsylvania field they couldn't locate on a map. After the battle, Gettysburg buried 7,058 soldiers. Another 3,000 were never found. Their bones still surface after heavy rains, buttons, bullets, and fragments of blue and gray cloth clinging to remains that have no names. Every year, over 3 million people visit Gettysburg. They come for history. Many leave with something else, an experience that doesn't fit comfortable categories, a moment when the past felt present. Are the ghosts of Gettysburg real? That depends on your definition of real. The trauma was real. The death was real. The grief that never ended was real. Perhaps what people experience isn't supernatural at all. Perhaps it's simply memory, inscribed so deeply in this place that the boundary between past and present becomes permeable. The last Union veteran died in 1956, the last Confederate in 1959. No living person remembers Gettysburg, yet the battle refuses to end. Some wounds are too deep to heal. Some stories are too important to forget. At Gettysburg, the dead don't rest, not because they're cursed, but because we need them. They remind us what violence costs, what courage means, what's lost when we turn on each other. The voices from the killing fields aren't asking to be feared, they're asking to be remembered. Are you listening?